Today we are going to talk about learning from your 40k games as I analyse my recent game with my Necron list. It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Tactical Corner.
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Well, actually, these are clips from my recent live stream. If you want to see some of my live streams, there's a playlist to them in the description below. For now though, let's have a chat about learning from your 40k games. I played Richard last week. I played him with my Jack of all trades list. Now there was an error with that list which I only discovered after I played the game, but basically the Canoptic Spider isn't able to regenerate wounds on the Silent King because it's a different dynasty. I'm not quite sure how I didn't pick that up, but I didn't. It's just one of those things. So obviously going forward I'm going to change the list. I'm going to talk more about that a bit later, but yeah, for now we're going to talk about learning from your games. I'm going to analyse the game, basically share my thought process or some ideas that I think might be useful to you guys. So maybe you do this already, maybe you don't, but after every game, whether I've won or lost, I like to analyse the game, try to work out maybe where I went wrong, where I could have done better, potentially where my opponent went wrong, and if they hadn't gone wrong that way, maybe how I would have reacted to that, and just analyse the game, look at the points, you know, where I could have scored those extra couple of points, and basically learn from your games, because each game you play is an opportunity to improve. And if you don't look at that game and try to work out how you could improve, then you may not get better. So yeah, it's always worth just trying to have a look. So looking at my game, which at the moment isn't on YouTube, it's going up on Monday. So if you're watching this live stream after the battle report is up, then I will link the battle report in the description below. I'm not going to give any spoilers into the result of the game, but I'm going to talk about a few things within that game. So the first thing that came to mind was in my first turn shooting, I was shooting the Silent King, and my two menhirs were shooting at the kill rig, and I rolled 2 dice and I rolled a double 1. So I used a CP to re-roll one of those dice, and then I used another CP to auto wound because I was so scared of not wounding the thing. 2 CPs for that. Now this really made me think, you know, did I waste those CPs? Because it was highlighted later in the game, I think maybe turn 2 or 3, I didn't have any command points left, and I really needed some command points. My Scorpec destroyers were up against the kill rig, and those big weapons are strength 7, and obviously the orcs have ramshackle, so if it's under strength 8, then the damage is halved. So I could really have done with that strength 8, and the plan is to use the CP for the stratagem to increase my strength. However, I didn't have any CPs at a vital time where I really could have done with them. So I sort of thought to myself, did I waste my CPs there at the beginning? And actually, I don't think I necessarily did, but what it did make me think was that I had the wrong dynasty code. My dynasty code was, all game dynasty code, was to be able to re-roll 1 RP dice. Now bearing in mind that this list, the Jack of all trades list, was made by one of my subscribers, and I was playing it basically as his list was made. And Jack said he had some good success with this all game protocol. Actually, it brought back quite a number of models being able to re-roll a dice. As it turns out, I brought back no extra models. The re-roll of the RP dice did 0 for me the whole of the game. However, if I had had all game protocol +1 to strength from the Novok dynasty, my Scorpec destroyers would have done a lot better, and I wouldn't even need the CP. And of course the all game protocol +1 to strength is going to help my other units as well, like the wraiths. So whilst initially I started thinking about CPs, the conclusion ended that I had the wrong all-game protocol. So going forward, I'm going to use +1 to strength protocol in this list. Now the other thing that I got thinking about was the mistakes that I made. It's very easy to say, I did really pretty well in that game, I didn't make any mistakes. But you always do make mistakes. You may not see them at first, but if you really think about them, you can find those mistakes and try not to make them going forward. So from what I could remember, I made a couple of mistakes in this game. So the first one was my 5+ invulnerable save, which I gave to the wrong unit. So my Chronomancer gave the 5+ invulnerable save to a Scorpec unit, which was on the left, right at the front, and the unit on the right didn't have the save. And I thought it would make no difference which unit I gave it to, because my plan was to move them forward. However, when I moved the right-hand unit forward, I then decided to move my left-hand unit to the left behind a piece of terrain for reasons that were, good reasons. However, it meant that I had the 5+ invulnerable save on the wrong unit. So what I need to do going forward is think more about where I'm going to move before I give the 5+ invulnerable save a bit willy-nilly. I felt I gave that save a bit willy-nilly, so I need to think about that a bit more. Now the other thing which I did is I killed the wrong wraith. So I was in a position where I was spread out with my wraiths a bit. I was on an objective and I was trailing back towards my Technomancer so that I could get my rites of reanimation, and then I had my command barge at the back. Now one of my wraiths died in Richard's turn, and I totally took the wrong wraith off, because I took the wraith off and exposed my command barge to a charge, which I didn't even see it until Richard declared the charge against the command barge. So I literally just took the wrong wraith off. In my mind I was thinking, right, I need to make sure I'm on the objective and I've got unit coherency and my Technomancer's in range of the unit. But I could have easily taken a different wraith off, had all of that and not exposed my command barge. So I've learned from my mistake there, so going forward I need to sort of think a little bit harder with my command barge, trying to protect him a little bit more. So those were the two things that I think I could have done better in the game, mistakes and things I'm going to learn from going forward. And that's what it's all about. Just even if it's just one thing you learn from each game, then you're going to gradually improve. Now on top of all of this, the other thing which is critical for you to do is to listen to your opponent. I always try to take in what my opponent says during the game and after the game, just to see if there's any key things that he says. Now, these can be good things and bad things. These can be joking things and also the serious chat after the game. I mean, Richard and I always have a chat after the game, well, if we've got time. And we try to analyse each other's list, performance, and maybe what we could have done and what we maybe shouldn't have done. Listening to your opponent can be quite a big eye-opener. Even if it's during the game and you're seeing they're quite scared of a unit, you can use that to your advantage, going forward. Now in this game, Richard after the game said that he thought that I might be better off having 2 units of Locust destroyers, splitting my destroyer unit into 2 to give me more threats on the table. He thought that would sort of make his job harder. So I had a good look at that to see, what the possibilities are. Now, splitting a unit, it's basically 7. I've got 6 destroyers and 1 heavy destroyer in the unit. Now, if I split that up, I'd have to have a unit of 3 and 4, and I don't think that's particularly threatening. Plus, I think that's a lot easier to kill because of the RP. So the only way I could do that, split them up, is to try to make way for some extra points to beef up the units. So I had a look at the list, and every unit that I looked at has a job, has a role, and if I didn't have that unit in the list, I felt that the list just wouldn't work in the same way. Richard did mention, maybe do I need those immortals in the list? How many points are they? They're 80 points, potentially. That would give me 2 extra destroyers, but then you're still looking at a unit of 4 and a unit of 5, which I just don't think is quite big enough to do what Richard's idea was. So I decided against it and sticking to that one big unit, that big threatening unit with all of the RP, as long as the whole unit doesn't die. I took on board Richard's thoughts, really considered them, but in the end I concluded that he was wrong. No, not that he was wrong, but that, in my opinion, the list worked better with that one bigger unit. But the key thing is to listen to your opponent and seriously consider their thoughts. So, going forward with my list, bearing in mind that we do have an error with the Canoptic Spider not being able to regenerate wounds with the Silent King because he's in a different dynasty. So, we could keep the Canoptic Spider. I mean, he could potentially sort of bring back wounds on the command barge, but I think ultimately it's probably best to drop the Spider. So that gives me 80 points to spend in this list. So I was looking at what I could take instead. Now 80 points is the perfect amount of points for the fortification. And the fortifications, well, a lot of people are talking about these fortifications now, especially for behind enemy lines. However, you've got to have a cryptic to be able to move those fortifications, and Richard is a very clever player, and to be honest with you, there's no way he's going to give up behind enemy lines. I could use the fortifications to be in my deployment zone, just to block areas of my battlefield. It's an option. I also had a look at their fast attack choices, because at the moment I've got 5 fast attack choices, so I've got 1 slot spare. So I was looking at maybe more Tomb Blades. I also looked at going back to what Richard said and maybe dropping the Immortals, which gain another 80 points. That's 160 points. Now if I could find another 20 points, I could then have another unit of Scorpec Destroyers. So I've got 2 units already in the list. Now this third Scorpec Destroyer unit would have to take up the role of the Immortals. So basically sit on my backfield objective. And you think, well, why would you have such an expensive, beefy unit on the backfield objective? Well, the reason for that would be, as I move forward, I do expose that backfield objective a little bit, especially to a very fast moving Orc army, with potentially the jump as well. At least if I've got Scorpex on the objective, it's like, well, if you want to take the objective, you've got to get through these Scorpex, whereas 5 Immortals on my objective is pretty easy for Richard to take down. So that certainly was an option. However, I do feel like I need a bit more scoring power in this list, so I have opted for an additional unit of Tomb Blades. With the points that I've got, I've managed to squeeze in a unit of 4 Tomb Blades with the basic gun, and that gave me just enough points to have one of the units of 3 Tomb Blades with the Shadow Looms, so that'll have the 5+ invulnerable save. So now I've got 3 units of Tomb Blades, fast moving objective grabbing units, plus the 2 units of Scarabs. Again, small units, fast, objective scoring units. So that's what I'm going to do with the list going forward. Plus, as I said, I'm going to change the all-game protocol to +1 to strength. So I'm going to play this list again with everything that I've said today in this video and see what happens. Now, if you want to find out more about my Jack of all trades list, then here is a video for you to check out, and here's a playlist featuring all of my battle reports.